Now in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at something a little bit different because we're not too focused on the hardware today. We're actually going to be taking a look at 10 great games that almost any PC can play. So if you are a budget gamer, stick around and see what you think of some of these. So even though we're not focusing on the hardware today, we do have a little system to show you. This system has been put together just to really demonstrate that almost any PC can actually play these games, and not only play them, but play them very well. Don't let the brand new case fool you though, because all of the components in here are pretty janky really, and they're pretty old as well. You can practically pick them up for nothing nowadays, and I found them in boxes around the studio just to get a system up and running. We are using a second generation Intel platform here, and for the CPU we've got the Intel Core i7-2600. They are not that expensive anymore, and they're not actually that good anymore, so you could practically pick them up for nothing. For the RAM, we also only have 8 GB of DDR3. That is 2 sticks of 4 GB. Still not a lot to today's standard, just enough to really get Windows 10, which is installed on this system, to really kind of effectively run. And then for the graphics card, we have a very basic and very old AMD Radeon R9 270. That is just a 2 GB graphics card, and they are pretty old nowadays, and I'm surprised that this one actually even worked. I wasn't expecting it to. I didn't think it would work when I plugged it in the system, but we did get a picture, even though it took us a while to actually get drivers to run. Using the latest legacy drivers for this graphics card just purely wouldn't run, and I had to do a lot of searching online to find an older optional driver that would actually get there. So it's not using the latest drivers, it's not using the latest operating system, and it most definitely is not using the latest components. It is actually practically old, and if you were to build a system like this nowadays, you'd probably spend around £50 on it, but to be honest, people would practically just throw these things away anyway, so you could probably get one for free. For the storage as well, we also only have a 120 GB SATA SSD, probably the fastest thing in the system, and it was also more than enough for the operating system, plus every game that we're going to be demonstrating today. But that's enough about the system. It is old. It is just like almost any PC. Let's take a look at the 10 games. At number 10, we have a game that is more of a remaster of an original, and that is of course Tomb Raider Anniversary. If you've never played the original game, you are missing out here, because this is a revamped version and it is fantastic to play. It was originally released in 2007, and you could easily play this game on this system in 1080p with a high preset, and you'll get around 500 frames per second. That means that you could probably boost this system up to 1440p and still get a very decent playable experience out of it. But I'm kind of guessing that anybody with a system like this or less probably won't have a 1440p monitor anyway. Like I say, if you have never played the original Tomb Raider game, this is definitely the version to get, because it is completely remastered. It works much better with controllers and with keyboards and mice, and you can have a great time playing it as well. At number 9, we have Painkiller. Now this is a very old game here, but one I really loved to play as a child. It was released in 2004, and it is basically a boomer shooter. You just move arena to arena, defeating all the enemies, but it's got some really good quirks in it. I really do love the actual melee system in this. You have a spinning blade which you can just run into enemies with, and that's pretty cool, as well as some kind of like electronic whip that you can pull people back. If you've never played this game before, you should definitely check it out, because it will practically run on anything, and it's just great fun to be able to pick up, have a run around and put down again. Using our system and running the game again in 1080p, which it does support natively, and a high preset, you'll get around 350 frames per second on average, which of course is more than enough to be able to play anything. In fact, you probably get more issues running that, so you'd probably want to enable VSync or something for your monitor just to kind of lower it down to 60 FPS, just to be able to get the game a little bit smoother. At number 8, we have Lego Pirates of the Caribbean. Now practically any Lego game, apart from the super new ones, will run on almost any PC. They're not the most demanding games out there, but they can look beautiful with the right settings. I only chose Lego Pirates of the Caribbean because it is one of my favorites. I love the storyline and I love the whole theme about it, and it's a little bit different to some of the others because there is a lot of actual action involved. This game was released originally in 2011, and it again supports natively 1080p, and running it with a high preset on our little janky system, you get around 200 frames per second. That is actually far too much for this game. You will really need to enable your VSync, or at least cap that frame rate, to get a really smooth experience, but it just goes to show that you can still play some pretty decent looking games that are really fun on an old system like this. At number 7, for any of those rally fans out there, we have Dirt 3. Dirt 3 is actually one of my most favourite rally games to play because it's just very simple, it's very small to download, and it still looks amazing today. It was originally released in 2011 and it actually does hold up in graphically compared to modern titles, and running the game in 1080p with a high preset, you're easily going to achieve around 180 frames per second. Again, that's probably too much for anybody's monitor out there who have definitely got a system like this, but it just goes to show that you could probably increase that up if you did have a higher resolution monitor or if you were playing on a TV, and you still get a pretty decent experience from it. At number 6, we have probably one of the hardest games to play and one of the ones that didn't perform as well as the others, although you still get a pretty decent experience out of it, and that is of course Battlefield 3. This is one of the best Battlefield games in my opinion. I played this for hours and hours back in the day, days and days, months and months. It's just a lot of fun to play, and even the single player experience is just amazing as well. It is very realistic and graphically it really still holds up today. Running the game in 1080p with a high preset on our system, we managed to average around 90 frames per second, which is just not bad at all. And it had a pretty decent 1% low as well, so you're going to get a pretty smooth experience there. For anybody out there that loves their modern combat tactical type games, it's definitely worth checking out because there is a full storyline here with the single player campaign, so you can have a good experience out of it and it'll practically play on anything. At number 5, we have probably one of the best zombie co-op games that I've ever played, and I still play this today. I will get it out now and again and play, and it plays on pretty much anything just like all the others. And that game is of course Left 4 Dead 2. Originally released in 2009 by Valve, of course using the Source engine, it practically plays on anything and it's beautifully smooth as well. Running the game just in a basic 1080p with a high preset, you'll get an average of around 220 frames per second. Far too much for anybody who really wants to play this game, but if you are into your zombie shooters, it is definitely worth checking out this game because it looks fantastic still, and you can have loads and loads of fun in co-op with lots of other people. You can pick this game up for practically pennies on the Steam sale at any point, so definitely go check it out. It's one that is really cheap to buy, and you can play it on a really cheap system too. At number 4, we have The Walking Dead, and this is the Telltale version. This game kept me entertained for a long time, and it was originally released in 2012. For anybody out there that doesn't like the kind of cinematic experience, it's not a game for you, but for anybody that doesn't mind watching quite a lot of CGI videos, it actually works out pretty well. It is a game that is a little bit different to all the others on the list because it is more of a point and click and decision based game, even though it is in 3D, but with its kind of comic book styling, it still actually looks pretty decent, and the story is really good as well. Even though you do make decisions through this game, picking and choosing what you want to do or what you don't want to do, technically you are changing the story, but the overall result will always be the same, so it's not as diverse as you think it is, but it's still a lot of fun to play as well. Running this game in 1080p with a high preset on our little janky system, you can get an average of 60 frames per second. This actually seems to be an built-in game lock kind of to the performance, because of course the game can perform better than that if you could do, but for some reason they've locked it down to 60 FPS, and because of the type of game, that's really all you need. At number 3, we have a game that I didn't play for years after it was released, and as soon as I did, I actually fell in love with it and thought it was fantastic. The game is, of course, Space Marine, and it was originally released in 2011. It's not the most demanding game out there, and it will play practically on anything, as we will prove, because running the game in 1080p with a high preset, you'll get an average of around 130 frames per second, more than enough for anybody. And for anybody out there that is a big Warhammer fan, as well as a third-person shooter fan, you will definitely have a good time with this game. Again, you can purchase this game very, very cheap, and they've recently released number 2, which is completely different because it is very, very demanding on systems. You will not get away with playing the new one on a system like the one that we've got, but you can actually play the old one, and you're going to get a decent experience out of it. It is a single-player campaign game, so you'll have to work through it end to end, but it is a great experience, and you can have a lot of fun there. At number 2, we have a game that is very well liked by the communities out there, and it is of course Spec Ops The Line. This game originally released in 2012, and graphically it was well ahead of its time. It still holds up today very, very well, and it is an epic experience throughout. Running the game in 1080p with a high preset, you'll get an average of around 100 frames per second on a system like ours, so you can get a pretty decent experience out of it, and it is really fun to play. It is more of a tactical style shooter, but the storyline behind the game is actually so immense that it really draws you in, and it becomes addictive just to complete it. Definitely worth checking out if you are a fan of tactical games, particularly if it's third-person shooters. and if you want to see some beautiful scenery, because the level design in this is second to none. Leaving the best to last, at number 1 we have Half-Life 2. This is one of my favourite games of all time, and I will replay this game pretty much every year and every time I get an upgrade to my system, because it just holds up so well even today. It was originally released by Valve in 2004 and it was more or less perfect when it was released, but it has had some upgrades since. The version that we tested on our little janky system is the latest one, which has had a few improvements and enhancements, but running the game in 1080p with a high preset, you're still going to be seeing around 290 frames per second on average, and that is purely because the game also has a built-in lock. We could have removed that lock, but we thought demonstrating 290 FPS was more than enough for anybody, and to be honest, this game just wasn't designed for this kind of resolution. Really, you can play it on some real janky systems by boosting up the resolution to 1440p or even 4K. We have done that on even APU systems and you still get a great gaming experience. As a single player game, it is an adventure all the way through and you really get to kind of interact with lots of different characters. The story really does build up and there's a lot of fun to have with the gravity gun and things like that. So if you have never played Half-Life 2, you should definitely check it out, because in a Steam sale you can pick it up for about £1 and it's definitely worth that and one to keep in your collection. So there we have it, 10 great games that you can play on almost any gaming PC, proved with this little janky system that we've got here. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of that games list? Have you played any of them? Did you learn anything new from it? Because I'd really love to inspire somebody to try something that's super cheap and is a great experience, or at least was for me back in the day. Also, let me know what games you would include on that list, because there are plenty of games out there in the back catalogues which will play very similar, but those are just 10 of my favourites. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of content, and also drop a like on this video to show us to do more. And I'm sure, as always, I'll catch you guys in the next one.